Hello, this video consists of a brief presentation of the BPMN-ExPro process, which develops BPMN extensions. The process begins with the intention to extend the BPMN notation, followed by the sub-process that will analyze the need for the proposed extension. This sub-process will generate the extension specification as an output artifact after it has been analyzed. Also, at the end of the sub-process, the extender will be able to answer whether there is still a need for the extension. If they answer no, the process will end and the extension will not be proposed. If the extender answers yes, we will proceed with the process where sub-processes 2, 3, and 4 will happen in parallel along with task 5, which will be to check if there are other new constructors to be introduced. So, throughout sub-process 2, if there is a need to add new constructors, the extender may be able to act on task 5 as well as in sub-process 3 and sub-process 4. In sub-process 2, the extender will describe the BPMN extension concepts, also generating the extension specification as an output artifact with the addition of the new concepts described. As an input artifact for both sub-process 2 and sub-process 3, we have the BPMN community guidelines, which are best practices for the extender to follow during both sub-processes. Moving on to sub-process 3, we have the development of the BPMN extension, generating as an output artifact the extension specification with the addition of the already developed one. In sub-process 4, we have the validation and evaluation of the extension, resulting in the final specification of the extension already validated and evaluated. Upon finishing sub-process 4, the extender should also have completed task 5, which is checking these newly introduced constructs. It will generate as an output artifact the list of the new concepts to be introduced. Moving on to the end of the process, if new constructors were identified in the developed extension, the extender must return in the process to follow the description of the concept itself, the development of the extension, and the validation and evaluation. If there are no more new constructors to be developed, we can finish the extension and proceed to the publication of the BPMN extension where the extension was finally proposed. For a better breakdown, we will now detail sub-process 1. Starting with the need to evaluate this extension, we will address whether the extension to be proposed is an application area or if it simply comes with the need to apply practical aspects. If the extender answers yes, that it meets an application area, they must conduct a study or review of that specific domain or application area, generating as an output artifact the list containing the references and contacts of the researchers in the field. If the extender responds that the extension comes as practical aspects, they will identify the concepts to be introduced for that extension, generating as an output artifact the list of introduced concepts. As a next task, we have the definition of the extension's quality requirements, where for better standardization, we will use the ISO 25010 standard to describe the requirements for that extension. For further details, you can access the artifact and the document that will guide the extensionist to follow the standards. If the extender still has any questions about that specific domain or application area, they may contact experts in that field and application domain following the list they were able to fill out previously. So, in this lane, we have the domain or application area expert who will resolve any questions the extender may have regarding that area or domain. The extender will return with the questions resolved regarding the questions reported by the extender, and the process will continue. As task 1.7, we have the identification. If the BPMN extension is the best one adopted for the extender's needs, it will generate a compliance checklist with the BPMN notation as an output artifact. On the ends, they will be able to answer if business process model and notation is the most suitable notation for the extension. If not, the extender may continue using another modeling language. If so, they will proceed with the process. We will analyze if it is possible. Describe the process of the extender's intent using the standard BPMN notation. So, if possible, the extender will model an example using only BPMN concepts where it will not be. If they succeed, it will not be necessary to perform the extension, since the original BPMN 2.0 notation will already resolve it.
The extender's need.
If it still does not meet their needs, they will proceed to Task 1.9, where the extender will access it if they have any questions about the BPMN notation. They will contact the experts. Here, as an input artifact, we have the contact information for the BPMN experts, followed by their email to reach them. In this lane, we have the BPMN extension specialists who will resolve any questions the extender may have, and once these questions are answered, the process will be afterwards. The extender must be able to answer if using only the original BPMN notation meets the need for that extension or not, or if they will still proceed with its development. If it replies that it is possible to develop the process using only the business process model and notation, the process ends and the extension is not needed. If he replies that it is still not possible, he will identify extensions related to the proposal he wishes to make.
So here, seta appoises masirji Waiki qua, so the extender will search if there are extensions already proposed for that need, generating as an output artifact the list of these extensions
that have already proposed the need for the extender's extensions.
Here we check if the extension is still needed. If it is still required, we will generate as an output artifact in task 1.13 the specification of the extension already analyzed, and the subprocess ends by answering yes to the need for the extension. Moving on to subprocess 2,
It will begin with the extension need already confirmed, and in task 2.1, we have the search and selection of constructors to be reused. So, given that there is other research related to that need, the extender must search the database for extensions that have already proposed that need to have the possibility of reusing some of the constructors. Which the previously analyzed extension specification as the input artifact. In task 2.2, we have the description of the extension concepts, where the input artifact would be the list of these reused constructors, which was generated from the previous task. In task 2.3, we have the analysis of the extensions, integration with the original constructors, where the extender must analyze this integration between them, using the list of these newly introduced concepts as an input artifact,
followed by their description.
Should the extender have any questions about integrating the extension concept with the business process model and notation concepts, it will be possible to contact the business process model and notation extension experts who are located in this lane. The extender will make contact, and the specialist will resolve all questions regarding this integration. They will respond, and the process will continue. As task 2.7, we have the equivalence analysis between the constructs, where this analysis will consist of the constructs to be extended according to the proposed extension with the constructs of the original business process model and notation. So, it is possible to characterize them. Either the need for that constructor is similar to an existing constructor in the notation, or there is a partial relationship between them, but the original notation constructor does not fully meet the need. There is also the option that there is a need to develop a totally new constructor which has no equivalence with any constructor from the original notation. At the end, the extension specification is generated with the described concepts. At the end of the sub-process, we have the conceptualized BPMN extension.
In subprocess 3, we have the development of the extension, which begins with the already conceptualized extension or simulations.
Following in parallel with task 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, and task 3.4. In other words, during the builder is working on these three tasks, the same 3.4 will also be happening. Starting the process with the definition of the extension metamodel, we have as an input artifact the metamodel of the BPMN notation used as a basis to define the extension metamodel. If the extension needs to report some validation rules for a segment of it, these rules must be defined in task 3.2, generating the metamodel as an output artifact along with these validation rules for the extension. In task 3.3, we have the definition of the XML representation of the notation, which is a good praxis defined by the OMG, where the extension must also be represented in XML schema.
In task 3.4, the extender must define the concrete syntax of the extension using the extension specification with the described concepts as an input artifact. It will generate an output artifact, which is a list with the concrete syntaxes developed during the activity.
In task 3.5, the extender will check for any issues regarding completeness, consistency, or conflicts with the developed extension.
At the end of the process, the extender must also decide whether or not to provide tool support for their extension, as it is best practice to have such support so that it can be propagated and used practically by other interested parties. If they wish to have this support, they will move on to sub-process 3.6, which we will cover shortly. If not, or after the tool support, it will proceed to task 3.7, where it will generate the specification for the developed extension, and at the end of the sub-process, the extension is then developed. We will now move to the sub-process that will address tool support for the extension, which will begin by applying the business process model and notation extension, and the user will decide whether to produce a new tool or adapt it by including it in an existing one. If they wish, or rather, if they do not intend to produce a new tool, they will add their new builder into the tools listed in this artifact. So, here are the listed tools most used for adding the proposed extension to them. If they wish to produce a new tool, they will implement this new tool, generating it as an output artifact, where in the next task, it will undergo a modeling tool test, where if corrections are identified, the extender must proceed to task 3.6.4, where these identified adjustments will be corrected, thus returning to test the tool again and continue with the process. In the end, the tool must be evaluated and the extension can finally be applied, thus concluding sub-process 3.6. Moving on to sub-process 4, where it will begin after the extension has been developed, where task 4.1 will be the use of this proposed extension in any desired module. If corrections or improvements are identified, the extender must be able to apply those identified corrections and improvements. If noticed, they will consult the experts, where as an input artifacts, we have the list of these BPMN extension experts, and within this sub-process, we will detail it better now. In sub-process 4.3, assuming the BPMN extension has already been defined, we ask what the extension proposed, whether it was an application area or a practical aspect. If it was an application area, the process will recommend consulting experts of the specific domain or application area and contact them. They will analyze it, providing feedback on the proposed extension in order to validate it. These feedbacks will be received by the exchanges, and if so, the extension has already been validated with those experts.
in case
if the consultation also happens in parallel with the experts in the application area, in case the extender's choice is not practical aspects, the experts in that area instead must also be contacted and analyze the extension, generating feedback regarding to the evaluation of that extension, where the extender will be able to receive these evaluations, and finally the BPMN extension will be validated by those specialists as well from the
application area to be adopted.
Returning to subprocess 4, after this consultation with the experts, if they return with any corrections or improvements, these must be implemented using the verification checklist for these issues as an input artifact. Moving on, the extension was evaluated. If so, it will proceed again to see if after these evaluations, there are still some improvements to be defined in the extension. If so, the improvements are implemented, and finally, the extension specification is generated after it has been validated and evaluated. At the end of the sub-process, we have the evaluated BPMN extension. Moving on to the final subprocess 3, we have the publication of the extension. Using the extension already being evaluated and validated as the initial event, we will add the most new extension constructors in the catalog, available within the activity, the catalog link, where it consists of adopting all the constructors of the extensions identified in BPMN. As an input artifact, we have the final generated document, which is the extension specification document with the extension already consolidated. Continuing with task 6.3, it is possible to endorse the BPMN extension notation where there is a need to contact the extension experts. They are notified that there is a new proposed extension, using the list of experts as an input artifact to contact them and send an email attaching the proposed extension. Continuing with the sub-process, we have its publication in conferences and journals, and the extension is finally published.
In the notification to the experts,
they will receive that email and, if possible, add improvements if they see the need.
If so, the extender will be able to endorse their extension, finishing the sub-process with the extension endorsed, and if the extender either does not respond or sees no need to endorse the extension, the sub-process is ended and the extension is not endorsed. This is the BPMN-ExPro process. Once again, we emphasize that the access link will also be attached for a better understanding of the process. The elements are clickables followed by their description. We thank you for your attention and collaboration, and we conclude this video.